Okay, we're back again on this video series called The Divine Artist. This is the sixth, sixth video. And what this is this magical journey that the Divine Artist is taking um, to meet the 250 greatest people of all time. And he was able to travel through space and time, and the Divine Artist is incorporating all of these greatest ideas and thoughts and metaphysics and art and science and quantum mechanics and religion and Buddhism, and incorporating with them within himself, the Divine Artist. And so we're on to the 136th most important person on the list of Glass Bead Game members. And that person is D.H. Lawrence, who was an author, and he had this one classic quote, and I can't remember it exactly. Um, uh, this bird sitting on the end of the bough is a wild thing that never felt sorry for himself, or something like that. And that's just a classic line that has been repeated throughout history. 137 is Zoroaster, and he lived around 700 AD, was Persian, and talked a lot about free will. Um, Friedrich Nietzsche named Thus Spoke Zarathustra after Zoroaster. Richard Strauss wrote his symphony used in the um, introduction to 2001 Space Odyssey, the dedication to Zoroaster, and others have studied him as well, his concepts of free will and self-determination. 138, Fritjof Capra wrote uh, the Tao of Physics, and he tied together Taoism and quantum mechanics in that book, and it's very similar to the Dancing Wu-Li Masters. Very important book, very interesting to read, very, very easy to read. 139 is Jesus, and he was probably the most important person in history, had the most impact on history of any person that ever lived, because of the Catholic Church, the power, the wars that have been fought in his name. 140 is the Dalai Lama. He actually lived up in the Himalayan mountains at one point in this palace on Mount Everest. And my son and I are planning a trip we may take together. We're thinking maybe go to Rome or go to the Himalayan mountains and possibly stay in this palace where Dalai Lama stayed. It was up and away from, built so that invaders couldn't get to it. But we're thinking one of those two spots. I've been to Rome. I'd really like my son to see it, the Vatican, all the artwork, and that would just be an awesome trip. But also, if we just go sit on a mountain for 10 days, might be pretty amazing as well. So one of those two things, if we do a trip together, that's one of the two places we're going to go. 141 is St. Thomas Aquinas. Really brought back the ideas of Aristotle around 1200 AD. 142, Meister Eckhart, which Alan Watts talks a little bit about, the mind of God. 143, Baruch Spinoza was known as the drunk philosopher, and apparently he was very intelligent, but he was an alcoholic as well. So a lot of his works apparently are these ramblings, metaphysical ramblings. 144 is Eckhart Tolle, who still lives today, wrote The Power of Now, which is very interesting and important I didn't like the book that much for some reason, but this concept of the power of now, doing things now, appreciating every moment as a sacrament in time, um, is so important, especially as Ayn Rand would say, that we only have this limited time on earth and you're going to die at some point and become a nothing. So that gives the significance to every day, every moment of your life needs to be like the Super Bowl climbing Mount Everest, the appreciation of every day. Andre Gregory talked about this with all of the things that he did, and then Wally answered, well, can't I just perceive reality by sitting in my apartment? And you can. It is, everything is this amazing grace, this amazing gift from God, every moment that we have. 145 is Shang Tzu. The other day I realized there's three of these Eastern philosophers that their last name is Zhu, T-Z-U, Shang Tzu. He was born around 300 BC and talked a lot about the purposelessness of existence in life. That's just kind of this random accident, but still the appreciation of this limited existence is so important on a daily basis. Also, I think maybe going with the flow of it and not necessarily swimming upstream against it, not struggling against it. 146, St. Augustine talked a lot about revelation, direct knowledge from God. 147, Nagarjuna, I don't know anything about that. My son added him to the glass bead game. I don't know a lot about him. 148, Erich Fromm wrote The Art of Loving, which is a realistic manual on how to love another person through caring and responsibility and knowing, and treating art like treating love like an art that must be learned, like the art of medicine. And that's just a classic book. 149, Confucius, I think lived around 500 BC, was really a realist. If you read his stuff, really was the foundation of the way China was built 5,000 years later. This real practical, kind of along the lines of an art of war. 150, Sun Tzu. He may be, yes, I think he was the one that wrote Art of War. Always fight downhill, don't attack unless you outnumber your opponent. Very realistic rules for warfare, which were so important throughout history. 151, Paul Dirac was a quantum physicist around the quantum Copenhagen interpretation. 152, Mikio Kaku talks a lot about the quantum future, where the singularity of humankind is going, and has made a lot of predictions. He said kind of along the lines of Orson Welles, who made a lot of predictions at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. This next quantum scientific human development revolution that's coming in the singularity is just going to be amazing. 153 is the second of the current musicians that are still alive, James Taylor, who is one of my favorite musicians of all time, just this mellow acoustic type music. I saw his son Ben Taylor perform the other day. We all went and saw him, and oddly enough, his opening act, Grace Weber, was absolutely phenomenal voice, beautiful, moving performance. And I've been in touch with Grace Weber and talking with her, and I have a prediction that she may be kind of like the next Sarah Evans her voice exceeds that of a Carrie Underwood or um, I can't think of the other tall blonde country singer woman's name, um, but her voice, Grace Weber, could exceed all of that. 154, Neil Young, um, is also one of my favorite. Neil and James Taylor have always been my 1 and 2. Alyssa Toffoli has been in there now recently, but my entire life, Neil Young, Cortez the Killer, um, other songs I've heard recently, um, This Is Love, and other just absolutely phenomenal. He has the most unique singing voice that you would ever want to hear. And if you ever get a chance to hear his 1971 CD Live at Massey Hall, is a very, very good acoustic, kind of at the very beginning of when he wrote the songs and started his solo career. 154, John Gribben wrote about Schrodinger's cats. This is a cat, dead or alive, while it's unperceived, and this dual nature to existence, kind of like goes into the quantum collapse and wave-particle duality. 156, Wolfgang Pauli, I don't know a lot about other than he was part of the Copenhagen interpretation quantum physicist. Richard Feynman, 157, he around 1940, 1950s, was a crazy professor, did receive a Nobel Prize, talked about this renormalization process of mathematics where it doesn't quite all fit together and work out, but he came up with this idea of renormalization where you just kind of ignore the pieces that don't really make sense and just proceed on with your equations. And he came up with these QED theories of quantum theory, and really he's a realist. Everything is particle. In the perceived world is all that you have to really be concerned about. He also played bongos on the weekends at the nightclub that he went to, and one of the great equations that he invented, he had put on the side of his car that nobody really knew what the equation was, but he said it was like the most beautiful thing in the world. 158, Murray Gell-Mann, quantum physicist, and there was some significance, particular significance, that I wanted to mention about here, but I can't quite think of it. I do these without notes, so I can't remember exactly. Possibly something around maybe the quantum soul or something. 159, Nick Herbert wrote a book called Quantum Reality, which is very good. It's one of the first quantum books that I read, very easy to read. He was a college professor, now like lives out in the woods or in the mountains or something, and smokes pot and does psychedelics, and kind of along the lines of a tune in, tune out, just these experiments with consciousness and reality that people went through in like the 60s. And if you listen to some of his videos online, it's really trippy. 160, Fred Alan Wolf writes a lot of books on quantum mechanics currently. 161, Thomas Nagel wrote A View from Nowhere, is a current philosopher, and talked about a God's eye view, that where he could be all-knowing, whereas we have a limited view. If we looked at an object, we can only see one side of it at a time. So we always have a limited view, whereas a God's eye, omnipotent view would know all of the features of existence. 162, Edward Kantarian is a new guy, a professor that I just listened to a 1.5-hour lecture on Frederick primarily, but he also talked about Fichte and Hegel and Martin Heidegger. And I've sent him an email, and I got a nice email back from him. And they really talked about this. Frederick Holderlin, Fichte, this divine eye, which precedes everything else. All of reality is preceded by the divine eye, the divine self merging with the divine God, as that is what precedes eternally everything in reality. And there's this oneness to it, contrary to Immanuel Kant, who came up with subject and reality and things in themselves transcending. 163 is Gilbert Ryle. I believe he may still be alive today, Professor Ghost in the Machine. 164, Stuart Hameroff is still alive. He's actually an anesthesiologist, doctor anesthesiologist, and read the book by Roger Penrose, The Emperor's New Mind, and has come up with this idea of the quantum mind. And in one of my books, maybe the Ontology Dialogues, I listed this as one of the greatest ideas of all time. And he is collaborating with the people putting together the movie Mindville. And if you can check out Mindville, about this character that's gonna they're trying to find themselves, and they're cartoon characters, and they view on TV real human beings, and so it's kind of this inverted reality. And they go to this carnival where they can see Plato's Cave and William James' Roller Coaster, The Stream of Consciousness, John Locke's The Brain in the Vat, Buddha is there, and some others at this carnival where they're actually going to find themselves. And they travel with this floating brain named I forgot his name now, but he floats and wears these sunglasses. 165 is Daniel Dennett. Is really into consciousness, and is really dogmatic on his views, and just thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and he's interesting to listen to. 166, John Searle. I've listened to his lectures. He is a professor at Berkeley, and he's considered the foremost expert on consciousness and the mind today. I find him kind of boring, but they say that he is the number one in the study of the mind and consciousness. He talks about Rene Descartes a lot, and that he's mistaken on his mind-body dualism. But that's all he talks about is Rene Descartes, but he just tries to refute him all the time. 167, Jacqueline du Pré is a celloist who in the 60s was considered the best celloist in the world, and then lost the one thing that she loved, and that was playing the cello, because she lost the feeling in her fingertips. So just the lost opportunity of what she loved most, and then this disease overtook her, and she ultimately did die. And there's a movie made about her life called Jackie and somebody, her sister, and it's just kind of a unique movie about her life, maybe over dramatized. 168, Lawrence Krauss wrote A Universe from Nothing, Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing. I have the book up on the shelf here. It talks about that stars collapse and create supernovas, and that's what created the constituents for all of human beings and the universe to exist, in particular human beings, because that was hot enough to create carbon, which was essential to create humans and consciousness ultimately. So he always makes the joke that these stars died for you. It wasn't Jesus that died for you, but these collapsing stars. I liked the book so much I put a huge collapsing star on my back, a tattoo, which almost killed me. It was 5 hours of extreme pain in the center of my back. 169, Charles Darwin. I don't really get into Charles Darwin that much, but it's extremely important, this concept of survival of the fittest. Lawrence Krauss really uses him and others for this atheistic view, and I don't think one view necessarily is more important than another, whether there's a God or this random accident of survival of the fittest. It all can be part of the same reality and an eternal being. But what's interesting, Charles Darwin he was studying barnacles and how they had adapted, and that's how it ultimately led to his survival of the fittest philosophy that he put together, and then evolution, theory of evolution, and then people use this to be, well, then you don't need God, and so it is very important, and I do think this, we do evolve, we do change. 170, Nicholas Copernicus studied the stars, along with 171, Johannes Kepler. 172, Alan Guth came up with one of the most important cosmological theories ever. They came up with the Big Bang, and they couldn't explain how the universe was created. There was like this gap at the very outset, of the Big Bang. So he came up with this theory of inflation, that possibly in the very beginning seconds of the universe just expanded to its entirety, instantaneously almost. But in the very beginning, it expanded at such an accelerating rate that it was faster than the speed of light, possibly. And today, we're able to take pictures into the past of the cosmos, and we can only get to within, I think it's 400,000 years after the Big Bang. All the pictures we take of the cosmos is viewing the past. And the universe is proven now, our perceived universe is 16 billion years old. But we can only get to this picture that's 400,000 years after the Big Bang, and that's the oldest picture known to man. 173 is another current musician who has an absolutely amazing voice, Tracy Chapman. A lot of people may not even know who that is. She ultimately bought an island and just moved there and lives by herself, I think. But her voice and her early music, singing about a new beginning and a revolution, it's just absolutely gorgeous. 174, Ray LaMontagne, current musician, initially moved out into the woods, started writing music, and now is just one of the most beautiful artists in the world, I think. His voice, and he's done a lot of projects for like Hollywood and so forth. 175, a recent member into the Glass Bead game, has to be there. David Gray, his songs are just amazing and beautiful. 176, a priest, George Lemaitre, about 100 years ago, coined the term Big Bang, and I don't know if he got in trouble for doing this because he was a Catholic priest, but he came up with Big Bang, and it's stuck ever since. 177, Wesley Salmon wrote Zeno's Paradoxes. 178, Xenophanes, an early Greek. I don't know anything about him. Possibly he may have been Zeno's mentor. 180, Christopher Langan is currently an outlier. He's gotten a lot of fame as being possibly the smartest man in the world, so an IQ of like 210, worked as a bouncer and came up with a theory of everything, and he's kind of an interesting mellow, shy guy. Benches 500 pounds. 181, Ernst Mach, The Speed of Sound, around 1850. 182, Deepak Chopra talks about reality and the discreteness of it, and that he's interested in what's in between the discreteness. Almost there's nothingness in between the discreteness. 183, Tim Tebow, who's hated by the world and loved by the rest. He is just an absolute saint. He's going to have an enormous impact on the world, not because of football, because of his virtue. 184, Jackson Browne, just again, something fine. His early songs of just beautiful, beautiful music. 185, Mother Teresa, a Jewish woman that dedicated her life altruism for others. 186, Joan of Arc was in charge of like the French army and was hated so much she was burned at the stake. I think she may be a saint now, or Mother Teresa, one of those two, or is the only woman saint, possibly. I'm not sure of that. 187, Achilles may be one of two of the possibly not a real character. My son claims he was during the Trojan War. The movie 300, or Achilles. Well, he's in the movie 300, and he's a larger-than-life character. And back then, you got your immortality by your name forever being remembered and repeated. So Achilles, that's why they always wanted to die in battle, that they would forever be remembered. And that's what's interesting about Achilles. 188, Alexander the Great, who was tutored by Aristotle, conquered the world. 189 is really a unique addition to the Glass Bead game. The Unlovable Lover, Corey Taylor, the lead singer of Slipknot, which is gets into why does evil exist and this randomness of we came from maggots in the beginning, and there's a 9-member band to this, and they wear scary masks, and it's just like the most mind-blowing music. I've seen them in concert twice. I've traveled great distances to see them, and actually have a Slipknot tattoo on my shoulder, and below it says "Beauty is truth, truth is beauty." But Corey Taylor now, he almost committed suicide about 10 years ago. He was going to jump off a nine-story building. Somebody saved his life, and now he's kind of viewed as almost like a genius with his beautiful voice and beautiful vision. Some philosophy departments have been interviewing him, and he's just kind of an amazing person, the unlovable lover. 190, Anaximander. Now, I'm not sure if this is, I can't remember. There's so many guys, and I can't remember exactly. One of the early Greeks. 191, Epicurus stated, "Follow your bliss." So this is almost like a narcissistic view of the way to live your life, of just if it feels good, do it, kind of thing. 192, Giordano Bruno. My son reminded me of him the other day. There's a statue of him outside of the Vatican to this day. I believe he was burned at the stake about 700 years ago for his beliefs, and there's a statue of him that was built by the people outside the Vatican 500 or 700 years ago. I have myself next as 193. I've put together 5 books now: Metaphysics of Being, the Glass Bead Game, I can't remember the name of the second book, the third book, the Ontology Dialogues, the fourth book, Being in Time, the fifth book, Journey to Qualia, and all of these videos that I've done. And I've, in jest, have called myself now the Divine Artist, because I've been the person that's been able to do these videos and travel through time and meet all these people. So just a play on words, the Divine Artist of myself, because I was able to experience all the beauty of all these people that we've been talking about all the way through here. 194, my son Tony Magna is a very special person. He's joining the Naval Officer Program. He's done a lot of studies of Eastern religions and Systema. He studied with Gracie Miami Academy, Jiu-Jitsu, and a lot of interesting things. And he is going to have a great impact on the world. And in one of the books, maybe even the last book, we talk about Saint Anthony, of how the Pope in 2049 was going to give up all the church's wealth, a true sign of altruism. And it's kind of a just a story about my son Saint Anthony. His name is Tony Anthony, and just play on words story that I invented about him. 195, Max Born, quantum physicist. 196, Aaron Schiller. Now this is Dr. Schiller. He's philosophy of mind. I'm in touch with him. He is in California. I can't remember which university, and I've been in touch with him in the last few years. 197, Stevie Ray Vaughan is in here. He died young. He was an alcoholic and really addicted to heroin, and almost died several times. One time really bad in Europe, where they had to save his life. He was just blood was coming out of his mouth, and then he got clean, and he was touring with another blues player, Eric Clapton, and he died in a helicopter crash in Wisconsin here at Lake Geneva. So that was just tragic. But his music, his guitar playing is beyond belief. 198, Gottlieb Frege, I don't know a lot about other than he studied logic. 199, Stravinsky. Another composer, I've been thinking about getting rid of him. I don't know a lot about him, but I guess he collaborated with Picasso at one point, so I keep him in. 200, Franz Liszt. I've been listening to his music on the Symphony Channel, and he is has some of the prettiest music that you'd ever want to hear. Also 201, Franz Schubert. Franz Schubert even more so, I think, of just this pretty violin soothing music. 202, Dr. Suzuki, Alan Watts talked about a lot, brought Eastern mysticism to the Western world, considered the Western expert on Eastern religions, Taoism and Zen and Buddhism. 203, Fuji, wrote the I Ching in like 500 BC, maybe even, no, 2000 BC. This is really interesting. We'll end on this video on him. Fuji, 2000 BC. This is the oldest guy in the glass bead game. And if you know anything about the I Ching, it's all symbols, dashes, and these hexagrams. And if you ever get a chance, open up an I Ching book and do it, and get your almost like your fortune told about who you are. And it's kind of an interesting game to play. And you just do it one time. The I Ching, 2000 AD. So we're up to 203 guys that the Divine Artist has been able to experience and talk about.